Hi, Laura. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Leanne. Thank you so much for having me.
I've been excited about this conversation for some time. Um, I wanted to talk to you about what you do in large part because while we hear about tarot and astrology, most of us don't understand what it even is, what kind of tradition it's based in. And I think it has a lot of misunderstanding around it because it's historically been kind of a private thing, shrouded with the medicine woman or the tarot lady, you know, in our hometown. And so I'm really excited to bring a fresh look to what these modalities are, how you work with them as a professional, and what kind of circumstances do these things play into. So I know that's a lot, but that's kind of an overview of what I'd love to cover on here. So I'd love to start by you introducing yourself and how you got into how you became a tarot and astrology and life and human design practitioner.
Amazing. Well, I want to really just appreciate, first of all, the perspective that you're bringing to these modalities because I started studying astrology probably just under 10 years ago, just as a hobby, because I've always been interested in people and what makes them tick. And I've always thought, even as a child, I always was like, oh, humans are so cute. Like, we're all doing our best and we all mess up, and how precious it is, And we all have these dreams and aspirations, and where do they come from? And how does that then dictate why we do certain things and how we respond to things? And where does fear come up? And where does love come in? And all that. Like, I think I was always super wise beyond my years as a child. And so that's always how I thought about people in life and observing them, having my own subjective connection to it all as well. But astrology, studying it as an adult, I started to see, reflecting on my childhood, where I really was raised with a lot of religion. And so you're totally right. The religious sort of matrix system that we find a lot of safety in, I think, as humans, it also kind of traps us in this paradigm that we can only connect to God or source or the divine, the whole creative force behind everything, that we can only connect to that within a controlled environment with other people. And while it's great to have fellowship, it's a complete force of separation on the planet. And like many things that started out really good and full of integrity and very purposeful, things like that are sort of crumbling. And we've been watching that happen, I think, really obviously since in the last 5 years with COVID and everything. So with astrology and tarot, I'm so aligned already with that perception of its dark arts, right? It's divination. Tarot is something that I was super standoffish about, even though I was studying astrology, because it had that Ouija board feeling even to me, right? And so during COVID, I started studying astrology even more as a way to make sense of everything. Like, what are the transits going on right now that is maybe causing or aligning humanity this way? And I started to get all these great answers and truth, and things started to really make sense. Then I started looking at, like, wait, then my natal chart must have really great information, true information about me and how I'm designed to operate, and therefore how I'm designed to be successful. Not just successful in the way we think of with a career and money, but with health and with love and other connections and things. So I started using my chart to experiment with how I was doing life. And I got out of so many frustrating problems with my health and with my career and with money. I aligned with a way more aligned job, way better health, found my soulmate, and it was just from studying my roadmap and my blueprint. And I started to see that God does work through these things. And during COVID is when I then finally got into tarot. I heard all about tarot being influenced by astrology. And I had bought a tarot deck a few months before COVID lockdowns came around. And in that period where we were all separated, I went through my dark night of the soul and I started to realize I've subscribed to so many lies and I've subscribed to so many forces of control, and I'm now ready for liberation, which is going to involve a lot of loss, right? And so I went into the tarot, and this is going to sound so like counter to what I've always believed about tarot. I went into tarot the same way I would go into prayer. And the way I experienced it is like, and I say this to my clients every time they sit down, if I'm doing an event or something like that, and someone's coming just for tarot, I always ask, what can I help you with? And they might say, well, I'm not sure. And I'm like, let me put it this way. If you could pray about something and get an instant response, what would it be? Because that is exactly how I approached the cards. And that's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't getting an answer, but I was definitely getting clarity, guidance, perspective, reassurance, confrontation sometimes. It can be very confronting when the cards come out when you're asking about your purpose or, a connection or an attachment that you have. If I ask, is this attachment good for me? And the Tower card comes out, I have to face the fact that like maybe my intuition is telling me that that connection is showing me where I need to be more free. And maybe that connection has served its purpose and it's over. So the thing I think that truly is uncomfortable for people is it's like that saying, don't ask questions you don't want the answer to, you know?
Uh-huh.
And
Mhm.
that being said, all of these modalities, astrology, human design, and tarot, they're all to be used introspectively when you're ready to love yourself unconditionally, because there's going to be a lot of confrontation of shadows and attachments and karmic timelines. But then there's equally going to be just as many permission slips to do what lights you up, because that's your key to success. And that's your intuition talking, which is leading you to abundance and leading you to everything. So
Love it.
my recent study has been Kabbalah, and the whole idea is the creator wants you to have everything that you want.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you wouldn't want it.
Yep.
And so that is sort of the approach that I take with all of this.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's like it's been a really powerful resource that I kind of accidentally stepped into because my friend had this beautiful tarot deck that was just gorgeous artwork.
Mm.
And she would say, let's pull a card, or I've pulled a card for you. And I really relate to what you're saying with it being a way for the divine to communicate, because the cards she would pull or the cards I would pull would be like, whoa. And it's easy to assume if you haven't done it or you're not open to it that it's like you're reading into it.
Mhm.
But there is something about the alignment of the card and the message behind it. And this is the part that I would love to talk about, is
Mm.
that what's so beautiful for me about tarot is that it is subject to your perspective on your own life. So when you read the thing, if you're not ready to see that, you might see it as inaccurate.
Right.
But if you're ready to see it, it's like spot on.
Yes.
And I love what you
Yes.
said about entering into prayer. I do the same thing if I feel conflicted, if I feel like which way am I supposed to go, or what am I supposed to think about? Like now it's less angsty and more just slight unsettled or slight out of alignment. And I
Mhm.
actually go into it ceremonially. I light sage, I get quiet, I have a private time, and then I start pulling cards.
Mhm.
It's transformational. So I'd love for you to talk about when we do or when you do a draw, what are we doing with that information on the card? Because there's light, there's dark, there's all kinds of things happening in the art, in the representation of the icon or whatever might be on the card. Like there's so much going on there.
Right. Well, I want to kind of go back to that tower card um, example I gave. If I have an attachment and I go to the cards, because maybe that attachment is causing me some anxiety or fear or lack in some way. So I'm like, okay, I need to, but I feel attached to this thing or this person or this job. Well, I might pull that card and the Tower card comes out, and the message is what is oppressive and not good for you anymore is being cleared and needs to be cleared. Having that surrender may mean that a couple days later, I start to just feel better about that situation. And I might pull cards again coming from that place of just really relaxed and surrendered. And then it might be the Two of Cups that comes out saying that, like, okay, you're ready to walk forward in agreement now because you've surrendered control or you've surrendered anxiety, or there's some, transcendence of a karmic timeline that um, was available to you, that because you leaned into that fear rather than avoiding it, you got through it, right?
Yeah.
So approaching the cards and taking the message, it's also something in my experience that it's not this big grand, and it can be this big grand ceremonial message that comes through and it's this huge breakthrough. But the other thing about tarot that I find so just relieving is most of the cards are just regular day-to-day life principles. There's like 76, 78 cards in the deck, right? It's funny, I've been doing tarot for so long, and when people ask me how many cards, I'm like, it's like 76 or 78. Like, it's not my job to know the number, okay? But most of the cards are minor arcana, which are just very just simple day-to-day mundane principles. And then only like 20, 22 of the cards are big overarching breakthrough things,
The major arcana.
So
Those are the majors.
yeah, the major arcana.
Mhm.
And what's funny to me about prayer when we talk about it is I pray sometimes just talking out loud to the creator while I'm driving or while I'm getting ready for the day. I don't sit down and make it this ceremony every time. But if there's I know there's maybe like a big like full moon, or there's a new moon, or there's some transits happening, and I can feel like I really need to just clear out all distractions and really make this a sacred inquiry, then I do that as well. And that's what I love about this spiritual space is it really deserves that kind of reverence. And it also deserves to not be on a pedestal every single time. And it just gets to be part of your day-to-day life,
Yeah.
and it's more intimate that way, I feel like.
Oh, I love that.
Hmm.
That's as like it's like a conversation, like an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Because the I see the major arcanas as like if we were to go into Native American, um, like, how things are positioned there in terms of representation. There's like the totem animal that is your
Mm.
animal for life or your animal for that season. And then
Mhm.
there's a spirit animal that may visit you that day with a message, like the hummingbird says to play. It's a
Right.
reminder to play, or the hawk, the reminder to stay high and don't get mired
Yeah.
in the detail. I see the same thing in the tarot deck that major arcana is like foundational life purpose, foundational things around um, key relationships, my purpose on this world,
Mhm.
how I'm moving as me into the
Mhm.
world. And it really reflects what I should be focusing on, letting go of, or whatnot. And
Mhm.
the minors, I really look at as like what's happening right now in this very moment. It's like a snapshot of what's happening today. Does
Oh,
that ring true at all for you? That's how I use it, but I'm just so curious how that
yeah.
appears to you.
That, what's funny is every inquiry for me feels like it operates a little bit differently, but I absolutely have had those moments with the tarot where I'm like, okay, the minors are telling me kind of what to do today, and the majors are telling me just what to keep in mind throughout all this, or what's going on holistically underneath all these details.
Yeah.
Um, which I love. I always use the word overarching life principles to describe um, the majors, but I like the word you use with like the foundational sort of principles too, because it's more that underlying what you're standing on as you go through all the mundane details and the forests and the weeds and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is the biggest difference between drawing tarot ourselves, if we have our own
Mhm.
deck,
Mhm.
and sitting with someone who does it professionally like you.
I know for me that, and this is in my chart, so I know this about myself. I have the power of objectivity. That is my superpower. I can detach. I'm an Aquarius sun, Gemini rising. I can detach pretty easily and look at things objectively. When I pull cards in a moment of emotional intensity, it's very hard for me to be objective with that response, you know? Sometimes it feels like, okay, I just wasn't in the right frame of mind. I need to pull the cards again, and we all have those moments when we're like, no, 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 do it again. Like, I don't like that answer, or it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
But if somebody else pulls cards for me, it would be so, what's the word? Not only are these cards coming out for a reason, but I've trusted this person also. And this person has no objective attachment to my situation or to me, and they have no um, motive to placate me in any way. So it's more trustworthy in that sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't want to say more trustworthy. It's a different type of trust because self-trust and building your intuition, investing in your intuition, tarot is a great tool for doing that because you get confirmation, you get reassurance, you get guidance. And when you really can take the confrontation and you're in those moments where you get those kind of answers, it's very tonic as well. Um, but we all have, a toxic relationship with attachments and being right and wanting certain outcomes. And I think for that reason, having a professional tarot practitioner who isn't involved in your life is extremely valuable.
It's like a third party objective kind of
Right. It's
of
the same reason
vision.
a therapist, right?
Yes,
Rather than
right.
just talking to your cousin, who's like, you're right, dump him or whatever. It's like, well, maybe staying in this relationship is helping you heal and transcend. And now you're not postponing that lesson to the next partner because someone objective has told you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take on the visual that I know is in my mind as I'm hearing you speak about you drawing cards. And that is, there's a woman here in my town that I grew up. She was down on the lower part of town. She had a little cottage on the side of the street, kind of
Mm.
in a random place. And
Yeah.
it was like, come in for your card reading and like
Uh-huh.
crystal ball style, right?
Right.
And chances are, if I remember correctly, she was draped in fabrics, had big jewelry, all the things,
Uh-huh.
all of the stereotypical stuff. And it gets reinforced a lot in media. I just watched a show and I was like, oh, there she is, the stereotypical witch, the stereotypical crystal ball reader. And we
Mhm.
love to push these stereotypical narratives out and then completely misunderstand the power behind them. So I would love to hear your take on that persona, that kind of that
Mhm.
person.
Yeah.
And was that a true thing? Was that gimmicky? Like, do you have a take on that and how that's changed now that this is so much more mainstream? It's not just the
Yeah.
person, the person downtown you might sneak into.
Yeah, and it's so funny as you're asking me this, I'm realizing I haven't given this very much thought all on my own, but what's coming up and through very clearly is that I think in the olden days, because tarot originated in Italy, I think in like the 1400s, gypsies were very much um, these vagabond types that had special abilities and special gifts of seeing. And because it's not a prosperous or hasn't always been a prosperous trade, um, because of how deeply confronting it can be, deeply invasive it can feel sometimes, um, there was a lot of association with gypsies and scams and stealing and things like that. And so there's that, and then there's also when I know as a healer that I'm getting into other people's energy, it's extremely important for me to have really strong spiritual hygiene, energetic hygiene. So that means protection and dark clothing, dark colors, dark, crystals like black tourmaline and amethyst, which is dark purple. These colors are very energetically protective. And so knowing this, it makes sense that esoteric practitioners of old have cloaked themselves in these colors as a protection, um, as a protection measure. And also that has been caricaturized by media, just like you've said. And the way media works is it has to be sensational, right? It has to get ratings, it has to get circulation, has to get lots of attention and people talking about it. So the more sensational it can be, the better. So of course, things like esoteric arts is going to bring up the more sensational parts, like the fear and um, the nuances that are easy to laugh at or mistake for just what's the word I'm trying to think? Just unrelatable,
Yeah.
unrelatable and therefore strange, unfamiliar, and have it be much more of like a taboo, provocative, fearful thing, rather than highlighting what spiritual beauty and breakthroughs came through of empowerment and liberation, right? And so what's funny is in the last couple of years since I've started my business, I've always been very, very intentional with how I present myself as a tarot reader. I wear white, I wear selenite, I have white sheepskin rugs with me on my chairs at my table. It's a lot of light colors. The crystals that I have on my table are rose quartz and pyrite and moonstone, right? So pink and gold and white, because I want the people that I serve to feel like they're having the experience that I have, which is this is a prayer. This is a holy, sacred, positive inquiry with your own intuition. This is your liberation and taking your power back and empowerment. This is not some fated instance where I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you,
Yeah.
and it's now I'm taking your free will or compromising it in some way, or you're getting you to coax you to surrender it in some way like that, because that is such an old, tired, inaccurate stereotype. And at the same time, anyone who gets into using tarot or astrology, they can use it that way if they want to,
Right.
but I don't.
Yeah.
And that is not, it's all in the intention
Yes.
that the practitioner has, and it's all in the intention that the querent has as well.
Yes.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is very powerful because
Mhm.
it I share a lot of what you're talking about because as a Reiki energy practitioner, I have to get over my own judgments about what that sounds like when it comes out of my mouth because I always have put forth a persona of somebody who's with it and logical.
Right.
And I actually suppressed this more esoteric and gifted connection that I have because I knew nobody was going to understand it. I didn't even understand it. But as I became friendly with it and understood it much better, I had to get over my own catches around that judgment. And so much of this came to light last fall when in the magazine I did the magazine was The Good Witch that month. And I went back into the witch hunts and what were they really and who were the witches? And I'll save you all of the history. We could read it in the magazine, but the core of that was a mockery of those arts. The very core of what was
Mhm.
happening there was centralizing power. And that goes back to what you were talking about of where it's a separation from God as opposed to a direct line through source.
Mhm.
That was the whole point, was to
Right.
separate so that we could be controlled and we could be manipulated and we could be told what to believe and how to act and all of these things and to fear. It was all based in fear. And so
Mhm.
the mockery of people like you and me and those who have these, um, what did you call it? These modalities. You had this
Right.
beautiful term for it.
Uh-huh.
Um, these more sacred modalities that weren't religiously oriented.
Mhm.
We became like the distrusted, unreliable witch
Mhm.
that was deemed evil.
Right.
And so all of these beautiful ways to tap source and to be in a direct line and conversation with God were eradicated. And it's
Right.
so exciting that it's coming back and empowering people to find their own answers, to listen to their own
Mhm.
intuition, to
Yes.
seek their own truth.
Mhm.
Because when we're seeking truth, we can't, like you said, you can't, it's the desire is in us because it was given to
Mhm.
us by the divine,
Right.
right? It all ties
Yeah.
back in.
Yes. Um, it's so funny that you're bringing up the witch hunts because I was just on my walk last night thinking about how, the divine masculine has this energy and this duty to accomplish and provide. And the divine feminine has this functionality and therefore duty also to receive and to rest and to heal, right? And they work together so beautifully, and we all have both within us. We must provide for ourselves, but if we can't receive, then we can't provide for ourselves, And yes, we must go and be active so we can be healthy, but if we can't rest, then there is no health. And I was thinking about the witch hunts and how the war between masculine and feminine energies, control versus surrender, has been just like an age old um, shadow aspect of humanity, and life on this planet. The war is part of life, and it's funny when you think about it because we all want war to end, but war is influenced by Mars, and it's a part of life. Aries, Mars, these are strong divine masculine energies. And the purpose of war is when there's a conflict, which there has to be for any evolution to happen, there has to be a moment where the dharmic timeline wins over the karmic timeline. And what happens is everyone's dharma starts to conflict with each other because we want control. And then we attach our ability to have control with our ability to have purpose. And the witch hunts were so interesting to me because all that was happening that women were doing was exactly what we came here to do, to connect with the earth, use it to heal. Most witches were doing nothing more than herbalism.
Oh yeah, they were medicine
Right.
women. Yeah,
Yes.
this wasn't demonic dark arts. It was
Right.
actually connection. Yeah.
And I'm gonna share this. I don't share it super often because it's like a triggering word with religion and everything, but like I said, during COVID, I was on like a spiritual walkabout. I was in my dark night of the soul and I was exploring everything. So, my dad, who's still very strong in his Christian faith, I would talk to him like, well, what does the Bible say about like what's going on right now? Like, and then I would look to other things. And it's funny how I came into this person's orbit, but I've always been, for literally no reason at all, I've always been a fan of Prince, the artist.
Hmm.
And so like so much further behind like my time, but I'm in high school in the early 2000s and I'm like buying Prince records and stuff because I he just so captivated me with his freedom and his individuality and his talent and all these things. He was a very magical person. And now beyond the veil, he is still a very magical guide for me. And I felt super close to his spirit during COVID because he had just passed away a few years ago. And I was following a lot of different people connected to Prince. And one of his colleagues is a Christian pastor, him and his wife. And the guy, his name is James. His wife was Prince's drummer when he had that all-female band. And they're a couple and they're ministers. And I would get onto his Instagram lives, this pastor that used to work with Prince. And what he would do on his Instagram live is he would just pick people that were commenting and give them a prophecy. And so
Wow.
I said I wanted one. And he brought me on. He closed his eyes. He's listening to God speak to him about me. And he said, I hear that God speaks to you in unconventional ways. And he wants
Uh,
you to remember as you go through, you're meant to use these tools, but you're to remember that it's not nature speaking to you. It's God speaking to you through nature. And little did I know that I was not only getting confirmation about astrology and tarot, but I was being guided on a path of holistic healing. Like I said, I had a lot of health problems, and it was a full body, all natural detox that got rid of all of my health problems. And it was juices and herbs and fruits and just cutting out all processed, unnatural, toxic things out of my life.
yeah.
And I felt truly one with God when I did that. And when I was fasting during that experience, I started to realize, yeah, fasting is in every single holy text because of its medicinal properties that God created us to function that way. And even as I say, as God created us, that might trigger some people, but wherever we came from, there is a blueprint, there is a functionality that we are designed to work in a certain way. And I think when you talk about truth seeking, we're seeking God, whether we realize it or not.
Yes. I'm moved by your story.
Mm, yeah.
I love that so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
not surprised that that was affirmed in that way.
Mhm.
Um, and also taken aback, not taken aback. I think I'm humored actually by the limiting aspects of our language when we
Mm,
talk about these things.
mhm.
Because so, like I'm completely understanding what you're saying
Right.
because I've tracked similar experiences, but in the attempt to convey, we are constantly running into a limitation that truly captures the magnitude of these modalities
Mm,
and the transformation that happens
mhm.
when they're implemented with intention and purity and connection and alignment and all of these things. And
Yes.
all of these words have been hijacked. All of these ideas have been hijacked. All of these roles have been hijacked. Everything has been hijacked
It's
and redefined as all of these things that are bad and all of the words that are applied to them. And so
mm,
I just want to applaud you for attempting to put to words these bigger concepts.
right.
And also the use of the word God, which, as you say, can be such a catalyst in one direction or the other. And I just find that that word has so much um, context behind it now
I
that
know.
it's like you don't even know. It's like a hot button. You don't even know if you want to use it. And
Right.
yet, what word actually captures source? Like, how do we actually do justice to this profound experience of being connected and also spiritual and of God, right? We're not
Mm,
just human, we're actually more spirit, we're actually more godlike than we are human.
yes.
So, I mean, I know we're not really talking about tarot, but we are talking about,
Mm,
I love that we are like in this space of talking about where how tarot actually fits into the larger picture.
mhm,
I feel like we're retrieving some of the misunderstanding around it and
mhm.
then maybe allowing it to be a curiosity again as opposed to a rejection.
Right. Yeah, I oftentimes will go to the farmer's market and I'll just set up my table and chairs. And I have so many beautiful interactions with people. There was a woman that came to me and she had a kind of a conflict going on at work, like a interpersonal conflict. She was all ready to write a letter about this conflict to the people in charge. And what she wanted to inquire about is, am I on the right track? Like, should I go forward with this? And the cards came out and basically said, why don't you go to the people in charge and just ask them how they feel? Like, why don't you just go with questions rather than a report
Mhm.
and just see what happens, And then we got into a big back and forth about that and how, you don't want to overplay your hand and make things worse for yourself, but you also want to um, let the people in charge be in charge, right? And do your role in the way that is the most beneficial for you and everybody. Anyway, she came back to me later when I was at the market again, and she said, I'm so glad you're here. I dodged so many bullets after that reading. That reading helped me so much. I never would have thought that. I knew that I needed like redirection, but I wasn't sure if it was just I'm feeling nervous about doing this because it's going to make such a powerful positive difference, or I didn't know if I was nervous that I just shouldn't do this, you know, or because I know what I know and I think my intuition is right, but is this the right way to act upon it? And I'm like, that is the perfect use of tarot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, after she left the table, there was a man that came up to me and literally got into a conversation with me asking me who's in charge at this table. And I said, well, you're in charge. He said, well, if I'm in charge, where do the cards come out? Are the cards in charge? And I said, well, the cards are just like a vehicle for your intuition. And he's like, so what's my intuition? And I'm like, well, your intuition is God speaking to you. And he starts, and then he's like quizzing me, and then he brings up Jesus, right?
Mhm.
And then it starts to be, oh, I'm being like quizzed, and right. And so he is coming to me with a perception, and he's this isn't an energy that I've invited in, this is an energy of control. And so I started to really feel, although this person is probably in their story doing the right thing, this is not a Christ-like thing to do. And we got into that conversation, and I had talked about the Christ consciousness, and that Christ was a really beautiful example of consorting with people, all kinds of people, whether they were bad people or not, no matter how badly it triggered the religious leaders, because there was a holy sacred mission to connect people with God. And he said, but didn't Jesus say, I'm the way, the truth, and the light, and the only way to get through God is through me? And I said, yeah, that was a really beautiful example that he set for everybody, because the only way to God is through you. And
Yep.
God is not, it's funny, I say God, and I'm picturing like some big, beautiful energy. And other people hear the word God and they think this big, like controlling man with a beard up in the sky that's going to smite you if you mess up.
Mhm.
That is the lie. That is the matrix lie that's controlling
Yeah.
rather than true and loving.
So amazing. What a
Right?
cool story.
I know.
That is amazing. Yeah, yes, yes, and yes to all of that because all of these modalities are very similar in that way. I'm really careful in Reiki not to be the conduit of my own intuition in the
Mhm.
situation. I'm actually
Mhm.
informed by the energy and the intuition of the person who's come to me. And I'm really
Mhm.
clear about that. I stay clear about that in myself and I
Mhm.
stay clear about that with them because I am not a guru. I don't want you to come to me thinking I have all the answers. I just
Mhm.
hold space for your intuition to speak. I just hold
Right.
space for your energy to heal itself. I'm
Right.
just holding space for this to be possible because otherwise the logical mind takes over and goes, this isn't possible, this isn't actually happening, and it overlays this judgment. And
Yeah.
so sometimes we just need to have the space held until we learn how to do it for ourselves.
Hmm.
And that is what you're doing.
Yes. I
Yeah.
always ask every single client after the cards come out, after I interpret it in the context of what they've shared with me, I always pause, or when I'm done channeling, I'll ask them, how does that feel? Does that feel true? And what's beautiful is a lot of people say, yeah, that feels really true. And a lot of people say, I'm not sure.
Mm.
And I say, well, this is really great. Tell me how you're feeling. And then based on what they share with me after that, they say, well, I just don't understand this card. And I ask them, what don't you understand? Or like what thoughts or feelings come up when you say that? And they say, well, here's what else is going on. And then I say, oh, it's funny you say that because now this card seems like it actually means this. And then they'll say, okay, this now feels really true. So again, it's not overriding. It's not giving me your power to tell you what's going on in your life and why. It's you inviting me in to help you navigate it as someone who speaks a language that you're trying to learn, which is a spiritual language. It's the language of your intuition.
Mm.
And it's funny when you were saying like our language is so limited because I hear that being said all the time by one of the people I follow that I learn human design from. She says we're so limited by language and language does us such a disservice sometimes. And one of my favorite quotes from Prince is everyone's trying to describe funk, but if you can describe it, it ain't funky.
Yes.
And I'm like, I think about that a lot. And I'm like, there is something spiritual about that, and the healing medicine that comes through funk music. There is a certain beat that is not in any other genre. And there's medicine in all things and in all styles of music. And it's funny because I've always attributed the genre of funk music to the sign Aquarius, where it's a really experimental and eclectic and resonates with humanity, but it's super far out. And that's the age that we're in. We're in the Aquarian age now. And what's funny is Aquarius rules human collectives, but we're going also from a human design standpoint into the age of the individual. And what is so powerful about all of this work and taking your personal power back of your spirituality, your intuition is Aquarius isn't glomming onto a religion or a political party or a group like that. Aquarius is collective individualism. It's when we are all 100% individuality maxing, that's when we are the most contributive to the community.
Yeah.
Because if we're all making candles and no one's making bread, then there's nothing to eat at candlelight, And if everyone's making bread and there's no candles, then we're all just eating in the dark. It's like we're going back into the age of the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker,
We really
as I
are.
keep telling myself.
Yeah.
And you got to know what your craft is.
Yes.
And when you were talking about Reiki, imagine that you just never followed through with it because you're like, oh, this is too weird. Imagine like you let it get to you that I shouldn't do this or I don't understand it and it's going to take too much time and maybe be for nothing. There's all these things that come into our minds that try to control and suppress our feminine, which is our intuition.
Yeah. So true. Oh my gosh, so many fun things you just said there. That individual collectivism is so true because this paradigm that's falling is this sort of corporate structure that we are sourced once again by a single source
Mm-hmm.
or a single collection of sources, and that's it. You're out and you're like out of the tribe, which isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that trade, that skill, that thing that you contribute that is your version. Other people may be doing it, but it's your version of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is really, I think, the way that we are headed like you into the future.
Mhm.
And also, I was just explaining to somebody yesterday this idea of filling our own cup and then
Mhm.
serving from the overflow. So
Mhm.
we are constantly going to the well and filling to 100%. So hard as women because we're always like, I have too much. Here, have, right? And then we're always
Uh-huh.
depleted, depleted, depleted. But if we
Yes.
can continue to fill ourselves through self-care of the real kind, where we're
Mhm.
really taking the time to fill our soul, then we are serving from the overflow. And if we can all, or at least a majority of us, enough of us, can
Mhm.
serve from an overflow, what happens when we have too much? We feel generous, we
Yeah.
feel open, we
Yeah.
feel content because we know we're taken care
Mhm.
of. So then what do
Mhm.
we do for other people? We're like, you want some, you want some, you want some. So imagine if
Right.
enough people were overflowing and just offering it to everybody else. Then, like you say, we would have the candles and the bread and the
Yeah.
textiles and the garden, all the things.
Right.
And this has to be the way of the future because we're using up our resources too fast. So we have to
Yeah.
rewind a bit. I don't think in any stretch that we're over. I don't think the earth is over. I just think this particular paradigm is over.
Yes.
And we're
Yes.
just going to go through a really uncomfortable rebirth.
Yes, and our country is experiencing that very strongly because of the Pluto return that we're having. When America was founded, um, Pluto was in Aquarius, or it went from Capricorn to Aquarius, and we just had that Capricorn Aquarius shift over now, where literally the Pluto, meaning the power, goes from the system to the people. And we need to detach from the systems, no matter how reliable they've been, because they're not going to be reliable anymore. That includes our political system. And what you just said is so beautiful. The more we pour into ourselves and serve from the overflow, the more generous we are, the more abundance there is. And then we have a truly abundant society. And I think that our economy is going to recalibrate to that. It has to because we're so fearful of scarcity. And we think that, it's bad to be wealthy because so many people are in scarcity. But what if we were all wealthy? What if there was more than enough to go around and it was all infinite? Well, the divine is infinite. That means each of us are infinite. And then that means scarcity is an illusion,
Right?
right? And just because it's so real for us sometimes, and in my own life, I've had very real seasons of scarcity. It's because I was I was believing the lie. I was believing the lie in some sort of way, and I had to go down that path to learn something, and then I had to come back to truth. And the first time I ever came back to truth after doing that detox and everything, that was the most abundant season of my life for a good few years even. And the challenges that have come through with entrepreneurship have really done a good job to bring me back down into that. And it's been wonderful because I've explored it on a new level. And now I'm stepping into so much more abundance, more than I've experienced ever before, I believe. And we can all do that. And it's such an honor to even consider that you or I could lead that for others with how we've experienced that experiment, you know?
Yeah.
I call
And
it an
that's the
experiment.
point. Yeah, it
Right.
is. Well, we're in one big experiment for sure. And that's the point is that when we are enlightened or have the awakening, then we can help others. We illuminate the path.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not as a, again, not as a guru, but as a guide, just simply as a
Mm-hmm.
guide for others to find their own truth in their own way. And this is really affirming for the human race. It isn't the demise of the human race. This is the
Mm-hmm.
affirming of the human race. And it's
Yes.
interesting, we've been in a very individualistic season, particularly with how we now communicate through iPhones, literally called iPhones, literally called iPads, I. And that was like the precursor, I think, to us focusing ourselves as individuals. What do I want? And that was the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the end of I have to just do it the way it's always been
Right.
because we started to see ourselves as having individual needs. And the majority were like, this is a bad thing. And it actually wasn't. It was
Right.
the stepping stone for it to be a good thing, a return
Right.
of ourselves, actually.
Right. Well, and this is so fascinating because there's so much fear around these devices, right? Because of the cameras and the control and all of these timelines of fear and control and manipulation and things. But what's beautiful about AI and where we're going is the algorithm is literally in your hand. You get to create it. So what are you liking and sharing and responding to and circulating? Is it fear? Is it disturbing things? Or is it joy and laughter and enlightenment and growth, right? And so I was listening to someone else say that Tara was the original Chat GPT. And I said, that is actually so true because I do feel like people are coming to me like, okay, tell me like, I
That's
don't have the answer, so
amazing.
I'm just gonna look right here for it because there's this guru that knows everything. I'm gonna pull from the universe. And what's beautiful about ChatGPT is it's gonna give you what you put into it, right? And it is gonna pull from all that is. And um, not to go too long, but the beautiful thing about human design and astrology is once you can sort of hone the purpose of your life, you can really focus on that and just let AI support you in that rather than fear that it's going to take something away from you.
Yep.
And I've been thinking this a lot lately. Wow, we really complained about our jobs enough to where our jobs are not going to bother us anymore,
Yep.
because you don't have to go to a cubicle moving forward. Like we're going into a time where yeah, you get to work from home or you get to work from your workshop or whatever the thing, wherever the space is, it's just going to take a lot more intentional discipline and self-development and quality assurance from yourself. You're going to have to be that company that you used to work for, right? And you're not going to have to clock in and clock out. You're just going to have to make sure that by your own design, that you're in integrity and bringing what you're meant to bring in the way you're meant to bring it.
There it is. Beautiful. Wow. I loved this conversation.
So did I.
I really, really love this.
Yeah, this was
Uh,
beautiful.
there was a lot we uncovered here to get curious about and explore and to feel empowered by, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
we're coming into the season of empowerment if we choose it. We can choose fear,
Mm-hmm.
but if we choose empowerment, curiosity, and stepping into some of these things just with like an open mind and open heart and seeing,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be for you, but it also doesn't have to be something that's mysterious and potentially negative. And so
Right.
I'm so, so grateful for your illumination of this topic and your wisdom here. And if anybody would like to know more about what you do or get in touch with you about working with you, how can we reach you?
Well, my Instagram, my website, and my email are probably the best way. Um, my phone number is also on my website. There's all kinds of ways to get in touch with me. The website, it's funny, my name, Laura Donahue, has been mononymed for a long time. And my nickname for years and years now has been LaDonna.
Uh-huh.
So my partner, when I was starting my business, would always sing Lady LaDonna, like the Beatles song Lady Madonna. And I'm like, that's a good brand name.
Ah,
So Lady LaDonna is my brand name. So you can find me at www.ladyladonna.com. And on Instagram, it is at @LadyLaDonna_.
great.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'll put all of that in the show notes so you're easy to find. And once again, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. And I look forward to doing this again.
wonderful. Thank you so, so much, Leanne. This was amazing.
My pleasure. Until next time.
All right.